Some of you I've seen in the room, so you know the ASTN really well, and others maybe not. So very quickly, because I won't spend much time on myself, my background has been working in sports administration in a number of different sports, and I came on board as the General Manager of the ASTN about 18 months ago. So something to remember at the end of this, if you feel you need to ask a question, the question would be, what would I do differently now I've had 18 months in the sports tech world and I went back into a traditional sporting role? But you can just think about whether you want to ask that or not. The ASTN is, I'll touch on in a minute what we do at a really high level, but essentially we're a not-for-profit organisation. We're driven by our membership, like most not-for-profits, and we're certainly significantly backed by government, Victorian government, but we've also had some really tremendous support from the Queensland government as well, and looking as a national body to engage where possible across the country. Technology could be my downfall today, which is a bit ironic when you work at the ASTN. So there's a little purpose statement there about the ASTN. You'll see a lot more on our website. But in essence, the ASTN as an industry body is there to help the sector grow, and the growth is generally going to be recognised through the creation of jobs, the creation of economic value. Whether that's the size of companies getting bigger, investing into startups. But our focus is on the growth of the industry, and we want to help the industry grow as much as we can through helping as many different parts of the sector. So whether it's a startup company, it's a company that's emerging and has validated technology and a customer base, to those that are really well established and maybe looking to grow and expand overseas, which I'll touch on as well in a second. So I like to always say the ASTN's role should be a footnote in as many stories as possible. We're never the headline act, but our role to help connect sports technology to sporting entities, to venture capital, to government. A lot of our role is certainly in that business matching space, as well as various programs that we've been running over the last couple of years. Now we have a video. I think it's I got the instructions before. Here we go. Short video from the ABC that did on the future of sport, and in particular with Queensland.
The future is out there, and the Brisbane Olympics will be in the thick of it. As we hurtle towards 2032, sports technology is taking off.
I think it's one of the most exciting areas for the 2032 Olympics, the ability to create an extraordinary experience for the largest sporting event in the world.
Innovators are reimagining sports, the spectator experience, and helping athletes hit their prime. One Sydney company is using mobile phone technology to identify talent.
We capture how people move in a natural environment, how they move throughout time and space, outside of a lab, unencumbered by sensors and devices.
The data helps athletes improve performance. It's being used by professionals in Australia, overseas, and also by schools.
We see that they're our future Olympians, so it's really helping us to identify talent.
An Adelaide company's creating flying racing cars, bringing spectacles of the big screen to life.
It is Star Wars, it is the future, it is pod racing in the sky. We're not a plane and we're not a drone, we're a whole new transportation system.
He says having flying racing leagues as a demonstration sport at the Brisbane Games would be a dream come true.
We'd love to be at the Olympics and do something there, so yeah, we'll push hard to be able to get there.
Flying vehicle technology is likely to have other purposes too, like air taxis to ease transport pressure on the ground.
I think that we might be looking at various types of drone technologies that might take large amounts of people eventually over time.
And spectators have plenty to look forward to. Smart stadiums of the future may be able to direct you to your seat via the least crowded route and let you know if there's vacant seating closer to the action. They could monitor lighting and noise levels and track the emotion of the crowd, identifying potential pockets of trouble for police. And how about having your hot chips delivered directly to you by drone? Virtual reality could give spectators at home a taste of live atmosphere while watching an event in real time. And you could be talking to holograms of real sports stars. Bruce Dell is the brains behind a Brisbane holographics company that's already developed interactive holographic Olympic sports. Now he's creating holographic copies of Olympic medals and the athletes who won them.
Make them so that they're able to answer questions, so you can have a conversation with their holographic copy.
Games visitors may also get the chance to experience Australia's vast landscapes via hologram.
And then people can walk through tunnels or go into rooms where the walls disappear, and now they think they're out at Ayers Rock at Uluru, and they're seeing around, looking for 100 kilometres in all sorts of different distances.
There's even talk that fans will somehow be able to pit sports stars of the past against athletes of today, or take part virtually in races themselves.
It doesn't matter what time zone they're in, there will be gamified ways that everyone in the world can be part of something.
These technologies will evolve by 2032, but of course there are plenty of ideas still to be dreamt up. Sally Eales, ABC News, Brisbane.
If you couldn't quite hear that at the back, I'm not sure how clear it was at the back. It is on our website as well, not just another plug, but yeah, it was I think a key from that video or news report that the ABC did is you saw three really distinct examples of technology. One around high performance or pathways, one around the fan and the potential around that stadium experience. And then when it comes to flying cars and that type of racing, I don't think there's a better definition of new sport and technology all merging into something that could be very exciting and very crazy in the future. It's very interesting how when you see the so-called flying taxis, how different audiences react as to there's no chance in hell that could possibly occur versus we did it with a student group who were, how quickly is this going to occur, and is there jobs already in this sector? So what is SportTech? And it's, again, I won't dwell too much. I've got a few little busy slides, so this information will either be on our website or you'll get it post presentation today. But really importantly there, as you're looking at it on your left, we're focusing a lot now on that term sport tech, very much like it is with fintech and ag tech and other parts of the sector. Sport tech, as you'll see with the next slide, is growing enormously. It is a big part of the sports sector. It's a significantly growing part of the technology sector, and we need to continue to relay that in our presentations and a lot of the work we do as to sports tech should be treated at the same level as some of these more established tech parts. You'll see there's the 9 market applications and then a really extensive tech stack that sits beneath it. But that gives us often a framework as we're engaging with members and we're looking to how we can help them to where they fit in a system that is still continuing to evolve, and I think in 12 months' time may look a little different. Now, the Sports Innovation Report 2022. Now, I'm not presenting it as a 12-month old report, but there's 2 sort of key messages that I want to relay from that. There's some of the data that's there that I'll touch on in a second, but really importantly, our 2023 report is going to be released next week. I can't release it today, and I almost could fall back on that sort of treasurer line with the budget last week. You've got to wait until next week. But I'm a little bit more rogue than our federal treasurer, so I am going to touch on a couple of slides that will give a bit of an insight into our report next week. But as you can see from 2022, and probably the real headlines are the size that sport tech is inside the sport industry itself, which is significant and growing, how many people are employed, and this is a constant aspect and element, particularly that I've really picked up in the last 18 months, and particularly when I come here to Queensland and we hear the discussion around legacy and the potential of different sectors. Sports tech's potential to employ people, to be an engine for growth is really significant, and sometimes it's seen to be at the expense of people. Technology is going to replace people. I've had a really good example, which I might touch on a little bit later, that came out of the US, where sports tech actually not only helps employ people in the industry, but it doesn't replace people that are in non-tech roles. It actually allows them to be deployed into more efficient and effective ways inside the business itself. So 2022, as I said, the value of the industry the size, which we'll update in a week's time, and really importantly, the figure up there now of 600 sport tech companies, that'll be closer to 800 next week. So, as I said, this is not, I won't say it's embargoed, but it's, and it's actually come up better on the screen than I thought, but we've got a heap of detail coming out, and there's two key things that I wanted to touch on as I keep to time, is a lot of research that we've done about the size internationally of sports tech and where there's opportunities for Australian companies, which we'll touch on with the US, and then a little bit about the potential opportunities in Queensland. So as you can see, and as you look at the report, again to your left from the market size in the US, and if you look at the circle as a clock, sort of around about from that sort of 2:45 to 3 o'clock on that clock all the way back to 12 o'clock. Those sectors around wearables, fitness, coaching and training, apparel, equipment, footwear, athlete performance, it's a significant high performance component that sits in the US as the industry leader when it comes to size of the industry, as you can see there, at, getting close to 50 billion. So the United States is heavily represented by that sort of performance aspect of sports technology. So the other quarter, if you like, from sort of 12 o'clock to nearly 3 o'clock on the circle there, is a lot around the business of sport. And again, it's the smaller sectors at the moment when we look at stadium, media and broadcasting, social media fan engagement, esports and emerging sports. But it's the area in the US that, when you read the report, you will see is where there is significant growth and significant opportunity for Australian companies that are developing technology in this space. There's multiple examples of stadiums, broadcast partners and other big entities like the NBA that are investing heavily in sport tech and providing a lot of opportunities for companies. Obviously a lot of those, and the focus is always on the US, but if it's been validated and established here in Australia, we are such a big sporting market as far as, you know, our interest and our investment in sport, it is relatable and transferable to the United States. You'll see there, probably not a huge surprise, there's sort of four key clusters around sports technology on the west, the east coast, and through that sort of Texas region, and a little bit in the south there in Atlanta and Miami. Now this will test your eyes, so this is where I've had to blur it a little bit, to protect IP until it all goes out next week. I've had laser eye surgery and I can't read that screen, so you'll be doing really well on the left there if you can read that. But the main sort of statistic, and again, you'll hopefully from a Queensland perspective, it'll be really clear with the report that Queensland is clearly the state in Australia that is growing the most when it comes to sport tech. There's around 142 identified sport tech companies in our report, but in particular the fact that the startup sector is higher in Queensland, the growth of the companies that we've picked up from year to year, and quite an even spread too across those 9 verticals, which is quite interesting. A state like New South Wales, which is a little bit bigger at the moment than Queensland, but not by much, has a really strong skew towards stadiums and broadcast technology, and a lot less when it comes to high performance participation and other parts of the vertical. You'll see there with the opportunities, and there's one that's not on there that I'll touch on that's really, again, just come up in the last week. So this is across the board, but something for, I think, Queensland to think about a lot when it comes to where these opportunities could be. So again, that pre-accelerator, that startup, that emerging space, I think is growing significantly here. We've had great support from Queensland Government over the last 18 months, and I think we can look to grow that further by being very targeted with what we would call that sort of pre-accelerator, early stage commercialisation sector can be. Women in sport tech is an area that has enormous growth. The ASTN has partnered with a US group called Women in Sports Technology. We've learnt ourselves a significant amount in the last 6 to 12 months about the opportunities, and our partnership with them was very much speculative at the beginning to sort of see where it could go. Is it relatable what they've done in the US back to Australia? And we've only had a couple of sessions already, but the potential particularly again in Queensland, but across the board, for female-led sport tech companies, for the growth of opportunities for sports tech-related roles is really significant. And sadly, the stats in this area are probably as bad as what they've been in a lot of the traditional sports, in that we aren't seeing enough female-led founders, female-led sport tech companies. It's changing slightly, but the group in the US who've had a lot of success, and they really do focus on a very inclusive way that we can go about things, has been a real learning, even for someone like myself and our team, to where we started with the MOU and the partnership and the potential of where it can go and its benefits for any part of the country, but a state like Queensland really picking up and running with it is enormous. ONOC, or the Pacific Islands, I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago, hosted here in Queensland, and again that feeling around legacy, what the Olympics could be, broader than just the sort of obvious things in front of us. The ability for sport tech in the Pacific, I think, is really significant. It's a great opportunity. This is an Olympics, obviously in Brisbane, in Queensland, but it's also in Oceania. And I think the potential for what sport tech can do through the Pacific Island countries, where high-performance programs in particular are very, very difficult to get off the ground, but sport tech can start to bridge that gap, and I think can help really significantly grow the success rate that comes from those countries. And we know, whether it's from a sports side or a sport diplomacy and a broader trade and government perspective, the Pacific is really important to us, and we should lean in, not just with sport, but from sport tech. Emerging and digital sports, but this is a real catch area for any new sport. So it's not just virtual esports, but it's action sports and it's new sports that are being created. If there was one area that I would really, if I had to pick today, that's the area that a state like Queensland could embrace, this is the one. I think you have the state and the assets and the value that could be brought to a sector that is still largely undefined and is still finding its way. We don't see this as replacing traditional sports. This is very complementary to traditional sports. The previous presentation, that I hadn't seen before I spoke today, even touching on how technology can get people active, play a role in health, play a role in well-being, I think is really, really significant. And we shouldn't underestimate that these emerging sports that are almost driven through technology are a huge, huge opportunity. And the one that's not on the screen, that's probably too late for the industry report, is microeducation. And this is something I learned a lot just talking to different people at the ONOC conference, and some other things that have been picked up of late, is our ability to educate people about sport tech at a micro level. So short programs that will, again, enable people in their roles, whether they're volunteers in sport or professional people in sport, to improve, to be educated. Technology can still be a daunting prospect for a lot of people, and we've been looking and building a program, I think with one of our partners in the room, eTrainU, around this sort of micro or smaller program space that can be of a massive asset, I think, to the sports sector. Last slide, because I have gone over. On the left, we've had, again, great support from the Active Kit initiatives, and we've been in this room a few times, I think. But one last one to leave you on is that the ASTN, with the support of Trade and Investment Queensland, are looking and will be confirming, I think in the next week, our trip to the UK, a real business matching exercise, small group of companies around Australia, Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria. But the international part of sport tech is significant. Australian companies shouldn't underestimate. Again, this is a great market to validate in. It can be a difficult market to grow to being a significantly big company, but from a growth perspective, the opportunities that exist, particularly in those bigger markets of the US, the UK, and what we're going to announce in North Asia, around Japan, that we will do later in the year, is really significant. And it'd be great that sport tech companies in this market are seeing where their opportunities may lie internationally. So sorry, Nicole, I did go a little bit over. I really thought I'd be on time, but That's it. Thanks for your attention.